And welcome to another episode of Zav's Takes. I'm Zav, and today I'm going to talk about a big story in the world, and that's President Trump's policy on the Ukraine war as we pass the 3-year mark of this conflict. Now, let's go back to 2022 when this war broke out. If the West, US, and European allies had taken a strong stand against Putin, a clear message that we do not allow dictators to invade other countries. And then Trump comes in and he reverses that policy. Trump would be 100% wrong. But that's not what happened back in 2022, and it hasn't happened over the last 3 years. When war broke out, most of these European countries, they were buying natural gas from Russia. Okay, Trump had warned them in July 2018 at the NATO summit, specifically Germany, do not become reliant on Russian gas. So even though they were giving aid, financial aid to the Ukrainians, they were also paying for natural gas from Russia. Now they weaned off the natural gas, but at no point have they given actual military manpower to this cause. They've given weapons, but a lot of that was with restrictions. The US did not allow the Ukrainians to use long range weapons into Russia until after Trump was elected. So Ukraine's going up against a power over 3 times its size in terms of population. No help with manpower and conditions with the weapons. That's not standing up to Russia. That's not fighting. Okay, that's kicking the can down the road. All right. And look at the consequences if you don't believe me. We all know thousands have been killed, civilians, soldiers, but also look at the land issue. All right. Harvard University's Russian Matters, they did put out an article that shows how the Russians have taken over, if you include Crimea, 19% of Ukraine. That's what's happened over the last 3 years. Okay. And specifically, the Kharkiv, Luhansk, and Donetsk regions have been decimated. Radio Free Europe had a story last week. They had photos before and after, pictures of those regions. And you could see for yourself, primary source, what has happened to the land. And beyond the civilian deaths, the Financial Times, the FT yesterday had an article showing the demographic challenges facing Ukraine. Okay, they use population pyramids to show how they're hurting on manpower. And they're up against a country that's not only bigger, but is getting mercenaries from North Korea to do their fighting for them. On top of that, they got the No Limits partnership with China. And the impact doesn't just stay with the Kharkiv, Luhansk, Donetsk, those eastern regions in Ukraine. It's a worldwide impact. Before the war, Ukraine and Russia was a breadbasket. 28% of the world's grain came from these two countries. And specifically, a lot of it went to the poor people in Africa and the Middle East. And those people's food supply has been hurt, and the food prices have skyrocketed. Okay, so that's the situation of what's happened the last 3 years. Now, you get to Trump, he comes into office, and by no means is Mr. Trump good or this perfect guy or Trump is Trump with all his flaws. Even yesterday, you look at the press conference with Zelensky. Now, I have no problem with world leaders airing out their differences, but that should be done behind closed doors. Zelensky came this way. He was signing the minerals agreement. No need for what we saw yesterday out in public. And Trump is dead wrong. Remember, because Zelensky didn't have elections, he called him a dictator without elections. He made up numbers about his approval rating. Trump's clueless there, should be criticized. Way in the wrong. But Trump is right to push for a new strategy in this conflict. You can't continue what has been happening these last 3 years. And it's not good enough for Zelensky or other politicians to say, "Oh, we're gonna fight or we're gonna we want peace." We need action. You need action. Okay, you have to negotiate a peace. And it's gonna, I hate to say it. All right. I wish that the 3 years had gone differently and that Ukrainian soldiers were on the verge of victory. And that's why, and that was the situation with the peace deal. But it's not what has happened. And I hate that this peace deal is going to be ugly. It just is with what's happened. So to conclude, if the West had truly stood up to Russia, all right, with real power, directly intervening and fighting for Ukraine, all these moves that Trump is doing would be 100% wrong. But the reality of what has happened and where we are right now, the US and countries in Europe have sent hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine. And despite that, Russia has taken over 19% of the land, destroyed the eastern regions, and the current strategy is not working. Okay? You've got money and weapons going to Ukraine, and Ukraine is losing ground. So the longer this war drags on, the harder it's going to be to save Ukraine. You can't keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Negotiations and peace have to be forced. And let me be clear, like I said, this isn't about giving up. This isn't. All right. It's just about saving what's left of Ukraine before it's too late. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you next time.